All right, welcome to the solution for the date time challenge. We're going to go ahead and create a console application. So let's go ahead and get started. File, new project. A battle-tested application that goes into production. So we're not going to do a whole lot of error checking around. Did the user give us the right date format? We're going to assume that they do. All right, so we're going to say we capture it as a string. So let's call it previous date string equals console.readline. And now we need to convert this string over to a date time. So previous date equals, and now how do we convert this over from a string over to a date? So date time dot parse. There's parse, try parse, and parse exact. I'm going to choose parse exact for all of my examples because of the fact that parse exact really is just that. It's exact. And I can use it to say, this is exactly how I want to lay out my the string coming in. So the string coming in is going to fit this format, and therefore you're going to map it this way. So there's no guesswork involved. The problem with parse is that it assumes. And that's great if you are not worried about localization. You're not worried about maybe they're not including the whole date time string or things like that. But if you have any of those possibilities, if it's not the rosy path, then you're going to have some issues. And we don't want that. And the worst thing we could get is that it parses it, but it parses it incorrectly. And one of the things we're going to get into in the bonus challenge is the idea that I'm in the US. So in the US, we have month/day/year. In other parts of the world, they use what really seems to be a more intelligent way of doing things, just like the metric system. They do day, month, year. Well, if it is February 5th, I would write it as 2/5. But what if someone wrote 5/2? If it parsed on my machine, it would say May 2nd. And if it parsed on their machine, it would say February 5th. And that's a problem. So those are things you want to avoid. And that's where parse exact really helps us out. So we're going to say parse exact. Let's pass in a string. So previous date string. And here's our format. So I'm going to say that the previous date is going to come in right now. Since I'm the US, I'm going to say it's going to come in as month/day/year as in two numbers for the year. So the 1D and the 1M just indicate that it's going to be either 1 or 2. All right, we're not done yet. We have to also give it a format provider. And we're just going to say null for this. We're not going to give it a That's the year, that's right. But 12/11, 11 is my month, not my minutes. And that's where I made my mistake. My mistake is lowercase m should be capital M. So now if I run this, in theory, 11/25/18 it's been 3 days since 11/25/18. And that's one of the reasons why we use a known quantity instead of just any random date you want, because it might have given me a date that sounded right. So if I do this again, and I were to say, let's say February 1st, 2018, 241 days. Sure. I mean, I assume. And that's, at this point, I have no way of verifying that unless we go through and count the days or something like that. So that's an issue. And that's why I tried something 3 days ago. Now, just to kind of point this out, what if I put 12/1/18? It's been negative 2 days, which means it's 2 days in the future. Now, I didn't say that I had to handle that in the normal challenge, so I'm going to leave that alone for now and say that's fine. We're going to come back to that when it comes to the hours and minutes, but let's first tackle the standard hours and minutes. Okay, so for now, we're going to go ahead and comment this out because there's no reason to ask for all these dates and times. We don't need them. So let's ask again, console.write, and give me a time. And now what we're going to do is say string previous time string equals console.readline. And now let's get the date time previous time equals date time dot parse exact previous time string. And our format, and this is going to again depend on what you want to do, but I'm assuming they're going to give me, again, in the US, we do 12-hour formats, which means that it is currently 11 p.m. over here. So I would say, let's just do, I'm going to do basically an hour difference, roughly an hour. So I'm going to say 48 p.m. like so. So that's the format I'll use. And so what we're going to do is replace this with the correct keys. So in this case, that'd be H, lowercase, and this would be MM. Now this, lowercase h, means that it is the 12-hour format, whereas the uppercase h means 24-hour format. And the PM, that's the AM PM thing, that should be TT is the equivalent for that, the map for it. And again, we'll pass in null for the format provider. So now it's the same kind of thing. We're going to say time span. And from previous time equals date time dot now dot subtract. And we'll have the previous time. And we'll say that console write line, our string interpolation with a $sign. And we'll just start right away with the time. So previous time string was, let's do hours and minutes. So from previous time dot hours. And from previous time dot minutes. Like so. So what we're doing here is we're using the time span, the ability to say how many hours does it have, how many minutes does it have. And so saying that's how many hours and minutes ago it was. So let's run this and see if it works. Okay, give me a time. So let's say we're going to say 10 50 p.m. That was 1 hour and 0 minutes ago, which is not great English, but it worked. Let's try it again, and this time we'll have it a little different. So let's say 11:15 p.m. So it was 0 hours and 35 minutes ago. So there we go. So as you can see, based upon this, it's 11:50 p.m. That's correct. So now we can calculate our hours and minutes. But what if, and this is where the challenge will get in just a minute, what if I said, okay, it is 11:55 p.m., which is actually 4 minutes in the future. Oh, 3 minutes in the future. So it's 0 hours and negative 3 minutes ago, as in it's 3 minutes from now. So we're going to tackle that in just a minute and allow us to assume or not assume that it's the previous that are not in the previous day. So essentially, if it's negative, we're going to say actually what you meant was yesterday at this time. So let's make that modification right now, because that's the easy one actually, which is interesting actually. So from previous time, what we can do is say this is our time span. It's now negative because it's in the future. So we could say if from previous time dot ticks, that just gives us a number, is less than 0. That means that it's a negative number. If so, then from previous time equals from previous time dot add time span dot from, we could do from days or from hours. Let's say from hours 24. And what this does is it adds 24 hours to our previous time. So if it's negative in the future, or so it's negative minutes, then this is going to say, well, that was 24 hours ago actually, which essentially is going to remove a little bit of time from the 24 hours and say it's going to be 23 hours, 57 minutes. Okay, so let's see this in action. So give me a time, and let's say that it is 11:59, oops, no space, 59 p.m., which is about 6 minutes from now, maybe 5. So it is 23 hours and 54 minutes ago. Almost 24 hours, not quite. So that's how we can manipulate it to say we're assuming it is no more than a day ago, but if it's beyond our current time, that means it was yesterday at this time. Therefore, in this case, it was 23 hours and 54 minutes ago. Now, the other part of this challenge was to allow the user to put in either a 12-hour or 24-hour format. So, for example, I'm using the 12-hour format, so 11:50 p.m. versus 23:50. So there's a couple ways you can go about this. One way would be to offer them options and they get to choose. But another way, it's really simple. And let's just do the simple way and say console.write what time format do you want to use? And then say string time format equals console.readline. And now we take that time format and we put it right in place of the actual format, which I'm going to actually paste it in, cut this out. And I'm going to do one more thing. If time format dot length is less than 1, meaning they don't really give us one, they hit enter, then I'm going to say time format equals the default. Okay, that's just a little kind of a upgrade, I guess. Let's run this again. So give me a time. Let's do it this time in the 24-hour format. So 23. No, let's do 21. Just be a little bit different. 21:45, and the time format is hours colon minutes. So that was 2 hours and 11 minutes ago. So it knows based upon the format I gave it, which is a capital H for 24-hour clock, and then the minutes. So it knows that that was the correct time, and it calculates properly and says 2 hours, 11 minutes ago. And now if we do it again, and I said it was 2:15 p.m., and I don't give it a format, it still knows it was 9 hours and 41 minutes ago because it uses that default format. So one more, let's go ahead and set up the same thing for our date. So let's miss those two. And now let's set this up. So when it asks for a date, we're also going to ask for a console.write. We ask for what date format do you want to use? And we'll say the string date format equals console.readline. And we're again have that assumption if date format.length is less than 1, then date format equals, and we'll grab this right here, the standard month, day, year, or at least standard for the US. Now let's try this out. So what's the date? Let's say it is the 21st of November of 2018. So that was 7 days ago. Date format we want to use is day, month, which we can actually do capital, just one M, and then 2 years. It's been 7. It's been 7. Huh. I need to put 7 days since. But that worked. It calculated it properly. Let's actually change that. 7 days. There we go. Make it a little cleaner. Now, I mentioned earlier that we also have the issue of what if it's actually in the future. So let's cut this out for a minute. And we have this from previous date time span. So if from previous date dot, let's say ticks is less than 0, and that means it's in the future. So therefore, what we're going to do, instead of doing a subtraction thing with this, we're going to do something different. But for now, let's go ahead and put the else on, meaning it's not in the future, it's in the past. There's the past. And we'll just paste the same thing in for the future, but we're going to say, we're going to change it all around. So we're going to say previous date string is this. So I could say 0 minus, it's the same thing here, but negative works just fine. So, or it should. Let's find out. It's always an experiment. So 12, 25, 18. And the standard format, and that's 25 days in the future. So 25 days from now is Christmas. So there you go. Let's just verify it's something a little closer, because that's a little weird that it's 25 days in the future and today is the 29th. Actually, it's 29th. But let's just verify that was something, since it just flipped over to the 29th, let's go to the 30th. I want to verify these dates a little closer to make sure I get it right. And it's 0 days in the future, which is interesting. It doesn't count tomorrow because it's a fractional. And that's what it's doing, is it's rounding down. So it's rounding to the anything that's after the decimal point, it's just kind of cutting off instead of rounding. So that's a problem if you want to be a little more precise. So you'd want to have those fractionals in there. Let's just verify one more. It should be that 12-1 gives us the 1 day in the future. Yep, because it's actually 1.9 something. And to verify that, we'll do our total days. And we'll hit start. Let's say 11, 30, 18. And that's standard format. And so there you go. So 0.9947 days in the future. So that means that it's most of the time, but it's not yet 1. Therefore, since it cuts this off, it says 0 days in the future. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's do this. Let's take our value here, and we're going to round it. So math.round, it'll pass in our number. And we're going to say 0 digits, so we're round to the nearest whole number, and then we'll say our midpoint rounding is away from 0. So we got, it's a little more complicated, it's a little longer of a method here. We probably could put it into a separate variable up here, but math.round, and we're going to say round to 0 decimal places, and then we're going to round away from 0. So it's going to round up at 0.5. Anything below that's going to be rounded down. So now let's leave total days, because we don't want the just days. Otherwise, it's going to say 0. That's our truncated rounding. Let's run this again. And this time, let's say 11, 30, 18. That's November 30th. And it's 1 day in the future, because we rounded up to the nearest whole number, since 0.99 rounds up. So there we go. And we should probably put the same functionality down below. So let's grab our math.round. And instead of days, we'll do our rounded days. Don't forget to take the negative off for days away from 0. So now if I run this again, and let's say when was 11, 28, 18, and that's 1 day since 11, 28, 18, because it's 11:29 right now. So our rounding is working. Okay, so that's it. We've now done the normal challenge and also the bonus challenge as well, where we've allowed them to specify a format, which I went a little harsh and just told them, give me the format. But you could have asked them questions. Do you want to use this format? Do you want to use that format? And just allow them options where you show them what it's going to look like and they do it. It's really up to you, but this works as well. And so we did that for both date and time. We also made sure that for the time, if it was greater than the time right now, that we assumed that it was yesterday at this time. And so we took care of adding the 24 hours so that it appears correctly. So that's the challenge. Hopefully you got something similar or got close, and hopefully you found this useful and at the same time stretched you a little bit. Okay, thanks for watching and have a great day.